It'll change your life. That's all I'm going to say. Is I feel a gazillion times better since I've been focusing on it. I'm running better. I'm losing weight, which if you have a few extra pounds to lose helps as well. So yeah, which it is. For me, it's been a game changer, Lindsey, and I will sing this. I will die on this. Welcome on to the next edition of Up. My name is Brad Nadauld. I've got the coach Lindsey Parry with us once again, and today we're talking all things recovery on the podcast, and particularly around this stage in Comrades training where we've been building for the last few weeks, and a lot of the programs have now got a recovery week in. We'll get into that in a bit more detail in a mo. Lindsey, how's it going?
Yeah, everything is good. It's nice.
Yeah, we're still not in peak Comrades training though. A lot of people are talking crazy mileage. If you're listening to the crazies, just relax. It's still a long way to go. Peak training's only coming. So don't get too excited. Don't get ahead of yourself. There's still lots of time to be doing some big mileage. But Lindsey, let's talk a little bit about the importance before we get into like the actual practicalities of what you can do to make sure you're recovering, particularly around long runs. There's been lots of marathons. There's a couple coming up this weekend in South Africa. There've been a few this weekend just passed as well. But let's talk the importance of recovery, and particularly in training for a race like Comrades.
Yeah, and we are on some of the plans because, again, the plans are people of different ability, as well as training for something slightly different. And the plans aren't all synced up perfectly, but two of the plans have a recovery week. So it's actually perfect to just say, listen, this is what and why we are doing recovery. And the reality of it, quite simply, is that without recovery, we cannot improve. So when we're training, regardless of the type of session we're doing, etc., the whole point of the training is to provide a load. It is to do some damage. So we are trying to harm the system slightly and in small increments that we don't overwhelm and break. And so that's really what injury is when we have overwhelmed the system and broken it. So we are trying to overload it. We are trying to cause a bit of damage. And then once we've caused that damage, we want to pull back and allow the recovery process to take place. And then the body will repair all the damage that's done, both from in a physical sense, and now we're talking bone, tendons, ligaments, muscles, all of these things, little micro tearing, bit of damage, that'll go, and then that'll be the repair process. But, and this is where the human body is so great and so adaptable, is that if we do this at the right rate of load, recover, then the body goes, okay, didn't work quite as we would have liked it to, so let's make it a little bit stronger. And so it'll lay down a bit of extra and fortify, so you get stronger tendons, ligaments, and muscles in particular. And that is how we get this kind of long, steady, progressive overload. And then also from a physiological point of view, it's like, what are we trying to stimulate? We're trying to stimulate this idea that we can supply more energy to the working muscles, more oxygen to the working muscles, and changes have to happen for that to take place. So again, it's a bit like your body's having a meeting afterwards, management meeting, going, hey, this is where we fell short. We need to plug those holes. Right, how are we going to do that? No, we need to deploy more red blood cells. Speak to the oaks down in the bone marrow. They need to up red blood cell production. Cool. Right, let's do that. Hang on. But if we send more oxygen and more energy down to the muscle, how are we going to process it? Yeah, no, go and have a chat to the oaks down at the muscles there and tell them they need to get going, building us some more mitochondria, because we need extra mitochondria so this is what the body does. And so we now have more red blood cells that can carry more oxygen and more mitochondria that can burn fuel and oxygen to give the muscles energy to contract and relax. Plus, we've got these much stronger muscles. So the whole system is just continually improving, and that's how we get stronger and faster and more able to do the things that we want to do. But it happens during the recovery phase. It doesn't physically happen while we're training hard. So if we train hard, and we just keep pummeling ourselves down, then the body's like doing a patch job and it's trying to catch up the whole time. But before it actually gets to the stage of improving, we're hitting it again. And then you actually just get more and more tired, and slowly but surely you break down, or you get sick, or you just can't meet demand.
Lindsey, I'm going to take you a step back before we get into the actual recovery modalities and what we should be doing in this week as a recovery week for those who have got them. You mentioned two things there that I want to touch on. And the first one is the damage. You're saying you're doing a lot of damage while you're training. And it's not a case of that you don't want to be smashing every run as hard as possible. So I think that's important. It's just a normal function. When you run easy as well, there is damage. It's not that you have to push as hard as you can in every run to cause damage.
Yeah, and the runs that cause the biggest damage are obviously our high intensity interval sessions and our long runs. So those are the two. But also when we're doing the strength training, when we do our short easy runs, there is still some damage being done. What we're trying to do is moderate that damage. So again, a few podcasts ago, we spoke about how important it is to train at the right intensity so that you're going easy enough to allow that physiological adaptation, but also to minimize the amount of damage. So if you run too hard on your easy days, you do too much damage, and then the plan doesn't allow for enough time between those sessions for you to recover properly. So it's all in balance. Things are there where they're supposed to be for a reason, so that we can do small amounts of incremental damage, fix, improve, and then there will be a couple of sessions, the really long runs and um, the shorter, harder runs that will do a bit more damage. But then also we give more time between those type of workouts so that you can recover and be ready before we push you really hard again.
Okay, cool. I'm glad you cleared that up. Then the other thing you mentioned was tears. And I've heard this at a lot of sort of marathons and long runs where, and like a good student, I'm taking notes, but I've heard a lot of people saying it's not like it's the pain that you feel in your muscles after a marathon or a long run. It's the buildup of lactic acid, and you need to actually run the next day to flush those crystals out. I've heard this at marathons. That is not the case. Tell us what's actually happening, why you saw after a marathon.
Yeah, look, there's a few things that have been in popular magazines over the years that persist for decades. But yeah, nothing could be further from the truth. So that stiffness that you're feeling after a really hard workout or after a marathon, it's called delayed onset of muscle soreness, and it is brought about by micro tearing in the muscle. So the muscles physically tear and they bleed, and there is very little space in and around those muscles and those muscle fibers. They're quite tightly packed there within sheets of muscle, and it's the lack of space in there and the actual swelling. That's the pain you are feeling. You are swollen, inflamed, and your body needs to heal. And the last thing it needs is more running and more damage. There are some things you can do to move the blood through the legs, to help speed up the recovery. But by and large, rest is one of the best things that you can do for it. Things like ice baths, obviously they help you to heal quicker, but what they also do is that they stunt the actual adaptation that you are going to make. So in that kind of scenario, it's often better to just ride it out and go the 3 or 4 days that it takes for that stiffness or micro tearing to be healed and for the inflammation to go down before you start running again.
Yeah, Lindsey, you often talk, we're talking recovery weeks in particular here, but I think it's important to touch on this now. In your training plans, you often talk about taking one full day's worth of rest, and it's not that we don't want people to enjoy their running. This is the reason why you want them to take a full day off every week.
Yeah, for sure. So, we're not even into recovery week and what a recovery week feels like. We're literally currently talking about what is the importance of recovery and why. And you've hit it. I like people to have rest days. In fact, for people who work full-time jobs, I'm big advocate of most people don't need to run more than 5 days a week. So on the Bill Rowan plans, there's an option of a fifth day if everything's going really well and you are feeling recovered and you're not feeling little niggles all the time and you're sleeping well. then you can do a 5th day on Bull Roan. And then, the silver guys, we've cracked enough jokes about how their lack of relationship status, but they'll run more 5-6 days a week. But for the 95% of the population out there, I'm very happy with 4 days of running a week, because it provides loads of time for recovery and loads of time for you to do some strength training. And then even if you want to do strength training on those so-called rest days or non-running days, let's put it that, or if you want to do cross training and you want to add those onto the non-running days, then as you said, Brad, I'm a really big fan of taking a day off every week. And that's for the physical recovery and recharging, but also the mental. It gives you a day where you're not planning your whole life around, when am I going to get this bit of exercise in, or I've got to do this, or I've got to be there at this specific time. It just gives you a more flexible day to focus on non-running things that you need to get done. So it's a very important day for physical and mental freshness.
Yeah, Lindsey, there's lots of things that you can do from a recovery perspective to aid the recovery. Obviously, rest is one of them. There's no doubt about that, and we've spoken about the rest day in the week. But let's talk about recovery weeks in particular before we get into those specific things that you can do. And these specific things you don't just focus on in recovery weeks, you need to focus on all the way through. But in a recovery week, what's the sort of best way to approach it? Because I think a lot of people think if they're not running, they're losing fitness, but that's not actually the case, is it?
And again, we've literally explained that the only way for your body to truly recover and repair is when we're not running. Can't happen while we're running. And these recovery weeks are really there to give your body a little bit of extra time to really go in and make sure that everything is being fixed properly and getting you ready for another round of training. So that process that I described earlier, that's kind of like an everyday ongoing thing. But it doesn't quite get that like overcompensate. It's continually improving, but this recovery week literally gives your body this big decompression, because what also happens when we have a recovery week is that everything comes down. So the whole week comes down. So we are more relaxed. And that means that your body's got more resources, because stress is stress. Your body can't differentiate between work stress, family stress, um, stress from bad news, bereavement, and training stress. Like the stresses, your body gets them and interprets them and ultimately processes it and gets it through the system in a very similar way. And by coming down once a month, essentially, and just giving your body more bandwidth. Okay. So when we're training hard, we're taking a large portion of your body's bandwidth. Now we cut that training down over the week. We return a lot more bandwidth to the body so that it can literally improve, fix. Think about that as like a minor renovation. So, the all the other things that are happening in the week is like when you are cleaning. So you're cleaning the house and making sure that everything's cool and everything's neat and things are where you would like to find them. And then like maybe once a month or every 2 weeks in your house, you then like blitz the place and then also drill a hole here and hang this up, or put a hook there and put that on. That's kind of that's then what your recovery week is. It's your minor little repairs and whatever, and next level. And then when you are finished doing like a major part of your training block, then it'll be like a small renovation where you like really tinkering and fixing and improving. So they just are so important, and they come at these regular intervals, and they allow your body to take restock, fully engage, and get you ready for the next 3 weeks of really just pushing that up all the time. So yes, the weekly recoveries are important for the low grade maintenance, and then these recovery weeks are really important for the bigger maintenance and upgrades.
Yeah, Lindsey, and it's important to, at this point in Comrades training too, because you might still be feeling really good. I mean, if you've been listening to what we've been saying and you're not doing crazy amounts of mileage, you're building up sensibly, you're still feeling quite good. it can be tempting to go, you know what, I don't need a recovery week right now. I'm going to keep on going. And you do. Like, it's like, as much as you feel like you don't, now's a good time to take a wee break, because it'll freshen you up mentally as well with what's coming.
Yeah, and if you are if humans had a better system in place that was a little bit more objective, and we weren't so inclined to fool ourselves, you could perhaps juggle around with those and go, well, I feel amazing this week. Everything feels good. I'm not tired. I've got like so much energy. I don't want to. You could potentially do a fourth week and then recover. But the problem is that human beings, we're not objective, and we'll always find a reason to delay that, because, as you pointed out before, you're worried about losing fitness, and that just doesn't happen. Okay. So if you do absolutely no exercise for a week, you will not lose fitness. In fact, the freshness will outstrip any minor loss in fitness. So you will be in a better position for performance. Week 2, we start to get a little bit of detraining, but the fitness still cancels that out completely. So from a performance point of view, we only start to compromise on our fitness in week 3 and beyond. And then beyond week 3, it actually falls quite quickly. So I think also, let's just get the fear that recovery week is losing fitness. It's not at all. Your fitness is improving, but importantly, you are getting fresher, and therefore able to perform better for your next 3-week block of training. And yes, if we were more honest, some of us could maybe do 5-6 weeks blocks and then with recoveries, but that won't happen. You'll keep convincing yourself that you're fine, everything's going well, you feel good, you're getting fitter, and you'll just try and crash on for another week. And it's just slowly but surely compromising the overall picture, pushing you into overtraining, injury, and illness.
Yeah, and Lindsey, the older we get, the worse this gets, and the more important the recovery weeks are. And the average Comrades runner is in the late 40s. I mean, the field's not getting younger. So the vast majority, or a very big percentage of the Comrades field, is 45 plus. And this becomes even more important as you get older.
Yeah, for sure, because everything slows down. So you need more time and even if you're doing the strength training, we still do lose strength and muscle as we get older. But if you're not doing strength, then that happens quickly and we lose a lot. And of course, if we've got less muscle to do the same amount of work, that means we do more damage. And if we've done more damage, we need longer to recover. And everything happens slow when we get older, so you need even more time to recover. So yeah, it's the spiral that keeps going down if we don't just take care of all the little things. So recover in your microcycles or week on week, and take your recovery weeks when they come, so that everything can be polished up internally, externally, and psychologically.
Okay, let's talk about specific recovery modalities. And there's two big ones. I want to talk about what I think is the superpower. Second, I've only discovered that in the last probably 6 months because I've really focused on it. But the other one is nutrition, and you can use your nutrition, particularly post runs, to really aid in nutrition. Talk us through that. Running the Comrades Marathon doesn't have to be scary and intimidating. Just thinking about running 90 kilometers or 56 miles should give you butterflies in your stomach. Add to that the hills you have to run up and down, and having to do it in under 12 hours. The thought of it is enough to freak the most seasoned runner out. Never mind a newbie to ultra running or a Comrades Marathon novice. As much as Comrades is a physical challenge, it's just as much a mental challenge. The constant mental gymnastics of second-guessing yourself takes its toll. Am I training enough? How long should my long runs be? How many marathons should I run? What does this pain in my knee mean? My ankle is sore. Should I rest or run? And then the two big ones. Am I fast enough? And will I finish? The questions never stop. The constant worrying is exhausting. And that's exactly why we've created the Comrades Marathon Training Roadmap. It's a proven step-by-step training plan to get you from where you are today to having a Comrades medal around your neck without the stress and worry, knowing that you've done what it takes to finish the ultimate human race, feeling strong and in control, ensuring that you arrive at the start line fit and, most importantly, injury-free, because more than 64% of those who didn't finish the race last year started with an injury. The Comrades Marathon Training Roadmap guides you through every step of your Comrades journey. Training, qualifying, tapering, and race day. We've got you covered every step of the way. Simply head over to coachparry.com/up to get access to it now, or simply click on the link in the description. That's coachparry.com/up. Now back to the podcast.
Yeah, and so we always split this one into in and between exercise. So in exercise is everything that happens while we're exercising, plus the first hour, with the first 30 minutes after exercise being the most important. But exercise is defined as from the start of exercise to an hour after the end of exercise. And then we've got between exercises is your other window. Now, the in exercise window, what's important to provide your body with is carbohydrates. That's the very important window, because during that window, that's when your body will shove the carbohydrates straight into the muscle as muscle glycogen. And so you've got carbohydrates or glycogen available for energy metabolism straight away. And you want to take small amounts of protein, because the protein helps with that, the actual physical loading of the muscles. But much more importantly, it primes the body to start the recovery process. So it kickstarts the recovery process. Then in between exercise, okay, that's when we want to provide the body with all the building blocks and all the micronutrients and everything that it needs. That's the in-between part. We want to eat healthy and we want to get in enough protein, because if you're supplying enough protein during that period and we've stimulated the repair process straight afterwards, then your body's going to take that protein, repair muscles, tendons, ligaments, plus all the minerals and everything else that you need just to maintain a healthy lifestyle and keep everything working and in check. And then the thing that I don't mention often enough, but you asked it in a good way on a previous podcast, and that was around the hydration. So, and then it's very important to stay hydrated, especially in the between. If you look after your hydration in the between, then you need very little water. Some, especially if you're thirsty, but you need very little during. If you're not looking after the nutrition between, you need to then have water with you all the time while you're training.
All right, great, Lindsey. The second one, the superpower. I have been notoriously bad at this because for many, many years I worked night shifts and sleep was a luxury. But I, in the last 6 months, have really tried to focus on improving my sleep, getting more sleep, and it's been a game changer for me. Sleep is, for most people, one of those things that's really like they I don't know. I don't think people get how important it is. Talk to me about sleep and its role in recovery.
Yeah, so let me actually talk both sides of the coin. I often focus on the pure recovery side of the coin, and that's the benefits of sleeping well. But the reality is that the downside to not sleeping well and the increase in cortisol, that is like just such a problem in terms of general recovery, but also storage of um, macronutrients, carbohydrates, and fats, and our ability to burn fats in particular. So if you've got high cortisol, that just stimulates burning of carbohydrates. And if we're burning lots of carbohydrates, we've got small stores. So that then means that we get hungry. And when we get hungry, that means we eat. And so high cortisol is not great. So if you're not getting enough sleep, not getting to bed early enough, you're going to have really high cortisol. And then on the flip side of that coin is what are the positives of sleeping and getting enough sleep, but much more importantly, the enough sleep is critical, but that's the part that we battle with because of our how we live. And much more important than fixing the number of hours is first fixing the quality of our sleep. Because if we get the quality of our sleep better, we've won half the battle. And then we can work on getting a little bit of extra time, or I mean, a lot if you can, but for most people, practically that's difficult. So now what am I talking about? So there are a few key things when we are dealing with sleep and improving sleep quality. And the first is, what are we doing in the lead into our sleep? Okay, so if we are messing around and spending lots of time on our cell phones, lots of times on a tablet, lots of time on a laptop, then you are going to struggle to fall asleep, number one. Number two, you're going to struggle to go into a deep enough sleep so that we can release testosterone growth hormone, so that we can really dial in on the recovery process while we are sleeping. The second thing is when we are getting into bed. So because humans were set up to be diurnal, that means that we are active during the day, we sleep and rejuvenate at night. So because we set up that way, we need to be sleeping, well, so circadian rhythm, we need to be sleeping at night, and we need to be sleeping. I want to use the word early, but then that makes me feel like I'm going to lose everybody. But essentially, you want to be sleeping when it's dark, okay? And that's very difficult for a lot of people to do. And so the research, the research shows that if we get into bed before 10, if we can be asleep before 10, that is what we need. But any time or falling asleep later than 10 compromises the peak release of the testosterone and the growth hormone. So in other words, that only starts when we're sleeping, and it builds up as we sleep until about 2 in the morning, and then it drops off. So if we are not getting enough, if we're not getting to bed early enough, that peak doesn't get up. So if we're only getting to bed at 12, we're only getting 2 hours. If we're getting into bed before 10, we're getting 4 hours of testosterone growth hormone leaking into the system. And so that is what we're after. So it's get off your devices for 30 to 40 minutes before you get into to bed, so that you can fall asleep quicker and you can sleep deeper, and then get into bed before 10 o'clock. Try and be sleeping by 10 o'clock. Those are two key areas. And then the third one is even easier to manage, and that is to keep your room quite dark. So thick curtains, keep all the lights out. Don't have a flashing cell phone or an alarm clock with a really bright interface. We want a nice, cool, dark bedroom, because that will then help you to sleep deeper. Our eyelids are membranes. So even though they're closed, if you've got a light flashing, your brain will pick that light flashing, and it interferes with how deeply you go to sleep. So those are the things that you can manage around improving the quality of your sleep. And then if we can get into bed earlier, my advice around that is a little bit like the strength training. Like, there's an ideal amount, and then we do the best that we can. So, you really want to target 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night if you can. But if you're currently having 4.5, 5 is going to be way better. So I'd say target 8, 7 is better than 6, and 6 is way better than 5. And that's kind of how we have to manage this during our peak training, is to just get a bit more, but really improve the quality of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll change your life. That's all I'm going to say. Is I feel a gazillion times better since I've been focusing on it. I'm running better. I'm losing weight, which, if you have a few extra pounds to lose, helps as well. So yeah, which it is. For me, it's been a game changer, Lindsey, and I will sing this. I will die on this. That sleep is so underrated, and it makes such a big difference. And then the cool thing with these recovery, or the recovery in general, is you can actually monitor it. So, like, if you are struggling, and you can actually track the recovery to make sure that you are sort of recovering from your sessions. You shouldn't feel shattered all the time. What are some of the ways that you can track this to make sure that you are recovering sufficiently?
Yeah, so I mean, again, we've got these layers of how do we do it, and we can start very superficially, and that is like, literally, how do I feel? So if I am sore, then we know for sure that the recovery isn't complete. So stiffness really tells you that recovery isn't complete. So I would then steer away from running. I may still do some cross training, just depending exactly how sore I am or what I did to make myself sore. But pain in any form, you're not recovered. So I might do a very gentle cycle or swim, something that doesn't involve running. So that's your kind of first line there. How do I feel? Is there pain? And then the second, slightly more subtle, but if you work in a building that's got quite a few stairs, it's a good test. Now, I mean, we're training for comrades. We expect our legs to be a little bit tired, but going upstairs shouldn't be a real problem. So if you are struggling to take stairs and getting a really deep fatigue in your quads when you're taking stairs, that probably tells you you're not quite recovering as well as you should be. And then you would maybe want to look at modifying your training and figure something out. And then we can go like deeper. It's like, okay, what does it look like inside? How am I feeling? How's my body responding to this training? And the very base layer there is I take my resting heart rate every morning. And if you've got a fancy wrist unit, GPS, most of them nowadays do sleep tracking. So you can wake up in the morning and go, right, my average heart rate while I was sleeping was X, and my lowest reading in the night was Y. Okay, cool. Let me compare that to the previous 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, that's within 1 or 2 beats. That's kind of normal. That tells me that I'm recovering well. Oh, hang on. I'm 5 beats out. I'm 5 beats higher. Yeah, I obviously didn't sleep well last night, or the training's not is a little bit too hard. So tomorrow, I'm just going to monitor it again. And if you get 2 readings in a row of elevated, you're getting sick, you're going to overtraining. So then you want to adjust your training. That's until that heart rate comes down. And then finally, by the same mechanism, if your watch does it, you can look at heart rate variability. And that's slightly, I mean, it's picking up on a similar trend, but it's telling us whether your parasympathetic or sympathetic nervous system is dominating. And remember, when I said if your body is flooded with cortisol, then you are fight or flight. Then your stress system, your policeman, is taking over, and that will suppress heart rate variability. So if you've got low heart rate variability, that means you've got high cortisol, you're stressed out, you're not able, and in that condition, you're not recovering properly, you can't recover properly. So then you want to peel back on your training and ease it down. Similarly, if there's a really healthy interplay between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, that means everything is nicely in balance. That means your heart variability will be high. That means you're recovering well, and that you are handling the training quite well. And so you can just crack on with your training.
Lindsey, you're going to laugh at me because we spoke about this podcast last week. We had a bit of a meeting about what we were going to chat about. And in my notes, it says, let's talk about the number one reason for failure. I have no idea what we wanted to talk about. So I'm going to leave that over to you.
I'm so glad, because actually, as we were going through this, I was like, I'm forgetting something that I wanted to talk about, and that is it. And the number one reason people don't finish Comrades is because they start with an injury. So literally 64% of people, was it 68%? It's okay. 64% is a high enough number. 64% of the people who do not finish Comrades started Comrades with an injury. Okay. And so that's literally why we are hammering on about recovery. That's why we've been hammering on the last few weeks about don't train too hard too early. We want you to start uninjured. You improve your chance of finishing threefold if you get to the start line without an injury. And recovery is critical to making sure that you don't get injured. If you are not recovering, you're not improving. So that's already should be enough incentive to make sure you're recovering. If you're not recovering, you're not improving, and you are risking injury. And if you start Comrades with an injury, you are going to push yourself into that 68% of people who do not finish Comrades. So that is the number one scary statistic, is that heaps of people don't finish because of injury. So, I mean, just quickly to summarize where we got that number from, we send out a survey monkey pretty much every year after Comrades, and we just keep building on those stats and making them more powerful. But in 4,000 questionnaires that have gone out, 1,000 answers have come back, and in in those 1,000 people, it was 68%, because 680 of the people who didn't finish crossed the box started with an injury. So make sure you recover properly. Make sure you build up slowly enough. Make sure you listen to. I wish I actually had that stat handy when you asked me a few weeks back, like what should convince people not to listen to the people in their clubs and to stick to their 40 to 50 Ks a week that they were supposed to be doing back then, and what stops them from this is the stat. You don't want to be injured.
Right, I need to clear something up here, Lindsey, and this is particularly for our international viewers and listeners. You said we send out a survey monkey. It's not an actual monkey, just so that people are aware. It's a brand of a survey company that we've used. And it's so funny that you call it a survey monkey because we've only used it once. We now use Google Forms. But yeah, just so that everybody knows, we don't actually send out a physical monkey to come and find out why you didn't finish Comrades. So just to clarify that. Lindsey, recovery is probably my favorite week of a training plan. I like training hard, but I also like hanging out on the dark side. Not that I want to hang out in the dark side during a recovery week, but they are so important, and I've finally discovered that they work. So it's really, really important. So thank you very much for your time today. Really do appreciate it. Just before we do go, don't forget this week is the next of our Comrades Marathon webinars. If you haven't registered for it yet, please do. The link is in the show notes or in the description, depending if you're listening to this on podcast player or if you're watching on YouTube. If you are just listening to the podcast, we do this on YouTube. So you can come and look at our mugs as well if you'd like. You can go just search for Coach Parry Comrades on the YouTubes, and you'll be able to find it. And then while you're on YouTube, don't forget the gentleman's agreement. And it's not just YouTube, it's on all the platforms. If you are listening to this, Lindsey and I put a ton of effort into it, and it is absolutely free. We want to make sure you get your medal, but part of that gentleman's agreement is we do that for you. And in return, you make sure that everyone you know who's running Comrades listens to this. So please make sure you share it. Also hit like, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming ones either. So until next time, Lindsey, thanks for your time. From myself, Brad Nadauld, it's cheers. Look after yourselves. Happy training, happy recovery week, and we'll catch up again next week. Cheers.